And so some of these businesses, maybe share a little bit about them. Maybe the ones in Ethiopia and also abroad.
So as I mentioned, I mean, most of the enterprises are somewhere between 1 and 5 years into what it is that they're doing. They would typically be already between 20 and 50 employees on average. Some of our businesses in Ethiopia are slightly larger than that, and are upwards of 100 and in excess of 100 employees already. Revenue-wise, they would not have exceeded the $500,000 mark, though there are also exceptions to that, and we've had quite a number of our businesses already coming into the program being multi-million-dollar businesses. But I think the other thing is, I mean, that we can see a little bit similar, maybe not as ambitious as Novastar, but that we can see that you can become a $1 million business, that you can become a $5 million business, and that you potentially in the future could become a 20 or even $100 million business. If we can see that potential in you, that's kind of what gives us some spark. In terms of industry, there isn't really any focus that we have. We're pretty agnostic. A lot of what we do with our entrepreneurs is also build a support network around themselves by making them lean on each other. So the peer component of our program is very essential. And this is something that I've experienced myself as an entrepreneur. You end up being extremely isolated as an entrepreneur. You think that the entire world is against you. You have no one else to talk to who feels the same way and who sees the world in the same way. So just having another group of people who are kind of going through the same motions is something that is quite important. And for that to work well, we've decided that we would not put entrepreneurs who are too similar in one cohort, so that they can share openly and freely without actually feeling that they're revealing competitive secrets and kind of undercutting themselves.
Amazing. And so a similar question to you, Andrew, around what do you look for in the entrepreneur and the business, but particularly the entrepreneur when you're about to invest? And then to add to that, how do you source these individuals? Where do you find them?
Well, I'm pleased to say that I look for a lot of the same things that John looks for, which is probably just as well. But I'd add a few extras to that. I mean, we are looking for high-capacity entrepreneurs, as John described, people with a scale of ambition to really make a difference. And I have to just say, not every investor is like Novastar, okay? Every investor has its own unique strategy. We are happening to look for people who could build a business that was one day turning over $100 million. So we're not interested in a lifestyle. Somebody who's doing a business to pay the bills and send the kids to school and have a nice house and a nice life, that's not what we back. There are people who do that, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. We happen to look for people who are going to, as I said, change the world or blow up. We're kind of the stupidly risky end of the spectrum. So the reason we do that is because for us, with the amount of money we have to deploy and the costs of running our own enterprise, we have to be backing businesses which, if successful, could be really, really big. And that's because in the end, we have to return money to our investors, who are mostly governments, actually. And in order to do that, you have to build a business of a significant enough magnitude to be attractive to buyers. And so they're not going to buy a little business, a mom and pop corner shop, however worthwhile that is. So we have to focus on those really big businesses, which means that we look for entrepreneurs, going to your question, Caleb, sorry, I'm getting there, who have the capacity that John was describing. But another thing, we never invest in a single entrepreneur, we invest in teams. We do not take single entrepreneur risk. For all the reasons you've just described, John, it's a flippin' lonely experience. And we're looking for people who have the resilience to take lots and lots of knocks and get back up and try again. And one of the things we typically say, and JC knows this because I've said it to her, is the only thing we know about a business plan for a startup, and we will invest in startups even earlier than John's working, the only thing we know about that business plan is that it's probably wrong. Okay? So what we're looking for people who is people who can figure out very quickly what's wrong and course correct. And that involves a certain amount of flexibility. If you think the world should just look like this, and it doesn't look like this, you often don't have the capacity to reinvent yourself, think again, pick yourself up off the floor, and have another go. So we look for really resilient people who have high capacity, who learn fast, who pivot when they find a problem. They don't just get stuck, right? And we look for teams. So those are some of the key characteristics we look for. And very often the people who we're talking to, they drink far too much coffee. They probably hang out in a place like this. They talk with their leg jiggling like that. They're kind of slightly, and their eyes are a bit too wide open. You know, that kind of slightly driven person who is not going to make do with a lifestyle business, but is going to do something spectacular or, as I said, blow up.
I find that so interesting, the whole not investing in the single entrepreneur. And so if people were looking for a partner, or what have you seen to be successful traits? You've been in this industry investing in Europe, but also here across your whole experience. How would someone find a very good business partner to work with?
That's a really good question. I actually think this sort of forum, and I'm not just saying that because we're sponsoring, but this sort of forum is a helpful place. That's why we're sponsoring it, actually, because you need to form a relationship of real codependency and trust, okay? Because you're gonna sink your life savings, your life's work into this thing. You need partners because you'll be more than the sum of your parts if you find you're right for co-founders. And honestly, I don't think there is a magic formula to that. I can't say, but ideally you want somebody who's complementary to you, who has equally high capacity. Because if you hook up with someone who's frankly a passenger, you'll very quickly get tired of that. You need someone who's going to be as additive to your business as you are, who is going to take as much personal sacrifice for that business to succeed as you are. And that's quite hard to find. But to be honest, I wouldn't do it if I were you unless you find that person, for all the reasons John was describing. It's really hard road. Now, what we try and do as investors is help support that. But we cannot do that if it's all dependent on one person. Things happen. People go under a bus. You get sick. Something happens in your personal life. So we can't afford to take a risk in that one person. So we're looking for a team, and a team that really is coherent and is equally dedicated, passionate about what they're doing.
So taking the topic of business model, John, I'd love to, you're probably working very closely with the business model once it's been developed. Can you talk a little bit about that? Often some of the feedback is we'd love to know a little bit more around the practical side of the actual business operations and the things to think heavily about. What have you found to be key aspects within that aspect of things with the business model?
Oh, that's a tricky question. You're really putting me on the spot. No, I think the real thing, and I kind of have to come back to what I was talking about before, is that willingness to understand your customer and that willingness to actually engage with the customer, that willingness to be your own business first salesperson. If you don't know how to sell your own product, how can you expect other people to sell your product? It's really as simple as that. And we see that not necessarily being the case with a lot of entrepreneurs who are a little bit more technically founded. And if there's a lot of IT entrepreneurs or mobile tech entrepreneurs, I think if you're honest with yourself, you will probably see some of yourself. I'd rather stay behind the screen and sit and code. And I know if they just understood what I was coding, they would definitely use my app. That conversation I've had a million of. And that's just not good enough. You need to kind of go out there and test all of your hypotheses. Then I think it is also understanding your entire value architecture. So one thing is, once you understand your customer and the value that you're propositioning to them, then how do you actually design your organization from all of the components, from each of the steps that you need to kind of sequence in the right way and structure in the right way to deliver on that promise. Because obviously what happens when customers, they're promised one thing and they're given something that's less than what they were promised, they're very unlikely to come back and be repeat customers. So making sure that you can both structure that initially and understand, as Andrew was saying, pivot whenever you find things in that value chain, your internal value chain in your business, that is not quite working for you, not quite effective enough, either from a cost perspective, a time perspective, or quality perspective, then that you can actually see that very quickly and have the guts to actually make that call on your toes. And then I think the last bit is make sure you don't become Move from dependency on you, the team of co-founders, or you as a co-founder, to reliance. Trust your team. Probably hire much higher than you would be comfortable with in terms of both pay. Accept the fact that some of your first employees are definitely going to be paid much better than you are in the first 2 or 3 years. And I see a lot of kind of stigma around that, either hiring someone who's better than me, more intelligent than me, older than me, or is being paid a higher salary than me. That often kind of holds you back in mediocrity. So having the guts to kind of make that leap of faith sometime is also something that we see making a difference.
So I'd like to touch on that, of if you're going to be hiring someone who you're probably going to pay more, who might have more experience, they might also be a lot older. Say in a culture like this where it would appear to be difficult to find people that senior and bring them into your thing. How do you go about sourcing that level of talent in your startup or what you're trying to create?
I think, again, being very, very clear on what it is that you want to do with your business. I mean, understanding what the purpose of your business is, all of these things of vision, mission, values, all of these things, take them from just being fluff and empty statements to actually mean something. If they mean something and you truly and honestly believe that you are going to do this, you're going to change the world, you're going to blow up trying, I think you would be surprised at how many people actually will be attracted to that. And then I also say, I mean, look for these programs. There was this lady before from the Canada internship or whatever it was, placement program. I think there's a lot of placement programs that both leverage diasporas, but also end-of-career professionals from Europe, from America, who are willing to actually say, I'm going to go and be the COO of this company for the next 12 months as a part of my retirement plan. I don't think there's anything wrong with leveraging some of the support structures that are out there.
That's excellent. And I imagine as people are sitting here, it's very clear from what I've researched to actually get on the Growth Africa Accelerator it is a game changer. To get on that program is a game changer. So there's probably people sitting here saying, how would I even get on that? And then from your end also, how do you source these individuals? So maybe speak into that a little bit.
I speak at events like this. And I hope they will come and contact me or one of my colleagues. It is. A lot of it is networking. A lot of it is being current with what's happening in the ecosystem, what's happening with entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, reading a lot of papers, reading a lot of blogs, reading a lot of online content to kind of stay afloat with that. And then having a lot of conversations with Andrew's team and with other investors' teams and engaging with them, get them to trust you enough to say the ones that they haven't decided to invest in, who may almost be there but still need some help, to let them forward an email to them and say, hey, maybe you should consider this. So there's a lot of investors who receive, and I know that is true for Novastar, receive hundreds and hundreds of applications and engagements that never amount to anything. Some of them actually have entrepreneurs that with a little bit of help or with a little bit of assistance might actually end up being interesting, maybe not for Andrew, but then for some other investor. And having a lot of those conversations, and that's in part why it's nice to be in Nairobi, because a lot of the investors are based out of Nairobi, is really one of the key things that we do. And then, I mean, we're lucky enough to have been around for a very long time, so we now have built up our own community and engage with that community, both entrepreneurs that we've helped, but also mentors who've been a part of kind of the external support around us, make sure that they kind of spread the word.
Amazing. And Andrew, would you like to add any more to that?
To the business model idea?
More about how you would go about sourcing individual, how they would get investment.
We're very easy to find. It's www.novastarventures.com. But actually, John's absolutely right. I mean, in all honesty, we've seen, in 4 years, we've seen 500 businesses, and we've invested in 15. So that's less than 3%. So we are very, very picky. But that's because we have a very specific investment strategy. And one of the things I'd say is worth doing if you're looking for investment is be smart about the differences between different investors, because they will have slightly different strategies. So that's not to say that because you're not a fit for us, you wouldn't be a fit for someone else. But we go about finding people really like John by sponsoring events like this, talking to you, just getting out there. And what we tend to find is good entrepreneurs attract good entrepreneurs. So once, like you guys a little bit, once we got started and began to build a portfolio of companies which were trying to do exciting things, exciting entrepreneurs wanted to know from those entrepreneurs where they got their money. So we ended up people coming at us, actually. And so part of me feels that's part of the initiative test. If you can't find us, then maybe we shouldn't be investing in you because you need to be dogged, determined, focused. You've got to do your research. You've got to be intelligent and thoughtful about how you're going to approach your investors with what kind of proposition, which is why actually what Growth Africa are doing in the ecosystem is really important, particularly in markets like Ethiopia where there are possibly fewer investors around, there are possibly fewer programs like Growth Africa around. So I would encourage you just to do your research, and you can do it online. But talk to one another, and that's actually, I'm so encouraged that you're getting people to talk to each other here, because actually what we find is our entrepreneurs benefit most by talking to other entrepreneurs. So share together. That's where you learn, like, who's smart at dealing with this issue, or which bank is being useful these days, or who's a good lawyer who doesn't charge too much. All that intelligence actually comes from the crowd, you guys. So talk to each other, network, and even if it's culturally a bit weird, go and do it anyway.